Hey, Chris, I'm not giving you a call then. Get tight.
It's like your meeting.
No, don't make it like mine.
You scared me,
Welcome. Supervisor Mike Kazari, County Carmel. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the community, it is my honor to introduce a dedicated leader who consistently demonstrates a commitment to the people of Putnam County. Our county executive, Kevin Byrne. Since taking office, Kevin has worked tirelessly to streamline services. He's implemented cost savings, lowered taxes, enhanced the quality of life to all the residents. Tonight, we look forward to hearing from a leader whose vision and dedication continues to shape the future of this county. If everyone, please welcome County Executive Kevin Byrne.
Sorry, I'm about the same height.
Yeah, you're torn.
I gotta say, Town of Carmel is so blessed to have Mike Kazari at the helm as your town supervisor. I don't just say that as someone who leads in county government, but as a Carmel resident myself. I've known Mike Kazari from when he was the police chief with his predecessor. And he and his town board have a lot of work ahead of themselves, and I think they're actually just going to be hustling out of Town Hall to go to the Hamlet of Carmel to conduct a town board meeting later this evening at the Carmel Fire Department, which I think is very special because it's the largest town in the county, and sometimes it can get segmented. So I know that's important to the board and the supervisor to serve both Hamlets. So that's important. Thank you, Mike. I shared last week prior to our budget presentation, and then during our budget presentation, that I wanted to make Putnam County more accessible. When I've talked about leading in county government, I've often focused on the core tenets of this administration, and that is to be the most affordable, accountable, and accessible county government in Putnam County's history. It's something that we're very much driven towards achieving. It's one of the reasons why we are more accountable in how we do business, how we are more accessible to the public, both through our communications online, through our documentation that's available to the public to reduce the need for FOIL, but also in person, accessible in person through constituent forums. We've done constituent forums every year in every town within the county. I did that when I was your state assemblyman, and I very much believe that's something that a leader in county government should do as well. But what is unique this year and different is we do the budget presentation, which I'm required to in our county charter. We give it as a presentation before the legislature at a public meeting. And there is an opportunity at the end for public statements from members of the public. But there really isn't that opportunity for a direct dialogue with your county executive. And that's why we wanted to hold this town hall. So a week following our budget presentation, I felt it important to give a smaller presentation. I'm not reading from a speech. I'm not giving you an hour-long PowerPoint. But most importantly, I can give you that shorter review and then open it up to questions. We're live streaming on social media platforms. We have Chris Formasano, our communications director, to my left over here in our executive office. I know our chief of staff, Matt Cavucci, is here. We have Barbara Reeds here on our team. And importantly, because there's another very special meeting going on this evening, the legislature has a budget hearing for physical services. So we want to talk about our capital plan and all those expensive projects, our infrastructure, facilities. All those important people aren't here, they're in the building. But we're happy to talk about it. But what we do have here is, and we're very grateful, is our Deputy Commissioner of Finance, Sheila Barrett, who, in case there's detailed questions in the budget that I can't answer on the fly, hopefully we can get a more detailed response to you. And if, quite frankly, I don't have all the answers on a $205 million budget for every program and every service, if we can't get you the answer this evening, we'll do our level best to get you an answer in due course. And with that, I'll share that we have some comment cards up here at the desk near Chris, and I think Barbara has a stack of them, right, Chris? So you'll come up here, Barbara, if you don't mind, and wave. Everyone sees Barbara, right? So we have these little questions for every town hall, or coffee with Kevin, or trailblazer with Bert, whatever you want to call it. Every constituent form we have, we bring these. We usually don't have to use them. If there's not a lot of people, we just raise your hand and we have a dialogue. But this way, if you have a question and you have to leave, we can get an answer to you. If you want to fill these out and ask questions in advance while I go through our slides, please feel free to do so. For those who want to ask questions on social media, on Instagram or Facebook, Chris is trying to monitor that. He's going to fill out those questions on cards as well, so we can try to get them addressed at the end of this forum. But with that, I'm going to go over to our slides to give you a more abbreviated version of our presentation from last week, and I'm going to take this thing off. So affordable, accountable, accessible. I mentioned the number, $205 million. That's a lot of money. And I'll show you in a slide in the future how proportionally, when you look at per capita at a neighboring county, it says we actually spend less on per capita than almost all of our counties. But the makeup, what makes up that budget? Well, it's a zero property tax increase, no tax increase included in the 2025 budget. As has been tradition in Putnam County, it contains about 9% of what your property tax bill is. The rest of your property tax bill is consistently made up of school district taxes, town taxes. If you live in a village, and we have some people that don't live in Carmel that came here for this town hall, village taxes as well, special district taxes, fire tax if you live in a fire district, things of that nature. The tax rate, for a number of reasons, because we prioritize our spending and we have not raised the tax levy, and this continues all of the tax bills from last year. It drops the tax rate itself by 5% and represents now the lowest tax rate in 18 years. In fact, the last time the tax rate was lower was in the year 2007. This is a nice chart that I like to share. It shows the trajectory. If you look at 2007 and 2008, actually 2006, 2007, 2008 were 3 years where the county sustained some of the highest tax increases that it had in recent history. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of that was the housing crisis, the economy, recession. But you can see that over the course of the time following that, the tax rate increased. You also, assessments clearly had an impact on that as well. And then you can see, as it started to tick past 2017 to 2018, the rate started to drop. And then the year before I took office, in the 2023 budget that was passed by the prior administration, they held the tax levy flat. It drove the tax rate down to 3.12 per $1,000 of assessed property value. And then we drove that down in our 24 budget, which we're living in now, 2024, to 2.85, which was the lowest tax rate in 15 years. And now we're driving it down to 2.7, which is the lowest rate, as I said before, in 18 years. I mentioned $205 million. That's sustained by a $46 million property tax levy, which was the case before. I think it's actually 46.2 if you want to be a real stickler. It also was sustained by sales tax reduction of $79 million. That's a conservative estimate. It actually budgets for a 2% increase in sales tax revenue over what was budgeted last year for 2024. So it's not an actual number, but it's 2% increase over what's budgeted. And then obviously there's state revenue that we get and other aid that assists county government. This is that chart that I was mentioning earlier. I showed it during our budget presentation. I also showed it last year. I find it really interesting because a lot of folks will see a budget and they'll see a big number and they get sticker shock and they get intimidated by it and they go, oh my gosh, that's so much money. And it is. And we very much take seriously the value of everyone's tax dollar. But I do think it's important to look at our neighbors and see what that spending per capita represents. And when you look at our population size, we don't have a city, and our population is 98,000 compared to Orange County, which is over 400,000, Dutchess County nearly 300,000. You can see in this chart that these are all from our neighboring counties. They're 2024 per capita numbers, not 2025, because we're one of the first counties to actually submit a budget. We're actually pretty early compared to our neighboring counties. So we're comparing next year's number to their number this year, and we're still lower than almost all of them. If you look at the 2024 number, 1,989, we're by far the lowest per capita than any of the counties in the Hudson Valley. And I think that's a demonstration and commitment to how we govern fiscally responsibly and in a conservative manner. To follow through on that point, because of our strong financial condition, in large part to our team in the finance department and many others, we've maintained our AA1 Moody's bond rating, which is very important for when we need to borrow. Unfortunately, in today's market, it does not guarantee low interest loans. We welcome the fact that the state has done more to lower interest rates, and we're very fortunate that we've maintained this AA1 bond rating. But because of our strong cash position and our reserves that have continued to be replenished through sales tax and other means, we have a very robust capital plan to invest in our capital projects, our facilities, our roads, other infrastructure improvements. $6.1 million is being funded by our capital reserve and not through borrowing, which is important because it helps us drive down the need to borrow and debt service costs. Another important point that I've talked about in years past is maintaining our property tax stabilization fund. It's an assigned fund in the general reserve where this is something that we can help maintain and not tap into, so it limits our need to rely on future tax increases in future years. And that's maintained at $7.5 million. I mentioned that we're continuing all the tax cuts from last year. So last year, in the 2024 budget, we cut the tax levy by a little bit more than $400,000. But another item that I was very happy to see got through in the budget with support from the legislature was the sales tax exemption. I actually worked on some of this while I was in the state assembly. My predecessor, County Executive Odell, was advocating for a sales tax holiday for the school year. Unfortunately, the state would not permit that. Logistically, it was very difficult for the state's Department of Tax and Finance to drill down for a week or two. But predominantly it was because the state already had an exemption where clothing and footwear under $110, that's where sales tax, while an important means of revenue for county government, it's regressive and it affects those on the lower income scale disproportionately more so. So the cost of socks or shoes for a child that does need to go back to school, it's a big deal when you have record-setting inflation rates. What we did was we opted into the state exemption. So year-round, not for 1 week, two, not for 1 quarter or a month, year-round, clothing and footwear under $110 in Putnam County, whether you shop online or at a store in person, you pay zero sales tax. No MTA tax, no county sales tax, no state sales tax, zero sales tax. And the big relief, honestly, is where we had to plan for and forecast how would this affect our finances is online shopping, because so many of us do this every day. So you shop online. This has my beautiful bride. Sure, we can do that too. Another item that we talk about is, it's a 5% increase in spending from the 2024 budget to the 2025 budget. So 5% represents a lot. It represents record-setting inflation. It represents our collective bargaining agreements with our public employees that we've had settled, our plans for those that we can prepare for that we're still working through, negotiating with, that are not settled. But the ones that we don't control, there's always unfunded mandates, the cost of Medicaid, the cost of FMAP, which the state siphoned away from us last year. All those unfunded mandates that you've heard from my predecessor and her predecessor, and you heard from me last year, they're still there. But in addition to those, the new outliers that I think are important that add to last year's budget is insurance premium increase. That went up $300,000. That's the municipal insurance. And that's for a number of reasons, including settlements that are projected with the county government, that we have to prepare for increased premiums for municipal insurance.
An increase in the New York State retirement costs, $200,000. 730 cases from our Department of Social Services. Those are those individuals who we are mandated to take care for, and oftentimes it's in a correctional facility. And there's a daily price tag for that. We really have no control over it. $600,000. These are a really big one. 10% increase in the cost of health insurance premiums. That's $1.8 million. Early intervention and pre-K program, another mandated service that county government is responsible for. We work very closely with the health department. That goes up over $1.5 million. I talked about employee contractual obligations, $1.4 million. Those are all things that are new increases. If you take that away, the actual increase in spending is closer to 2%. That's a nutshell. Yeah, all right. I know we have some other slides that this guy can pull up if it makes sense based on the question and dialogue. With that, I don't know if we can pass the microphone around. We got an extra microphone, Chris? I don't know if we really need one or not. If you filled out questions, you can certainly submit them, and I can read them and ask them. I'll ask your name.
We do already have a question.
We do? Okay, we'll start with that, and then obviously I'm not against raising hands. It's fine. All I've always asked for is when I speak with people in any forum or town hall, I like to know people's names. I know most of the people here. I don't need your last name. I don't need your address. I don't need to know what town you live in. I don't need to know your social security number. I don't need any of that. But I do want to know your first name. So I think that's important. So first question is from Deborah. Is Deborah here? No, oh, this is an online question. Oh, okay. We'll probably take care of you first. Deborah, lucky. When does the sales tax break on shoes and clothing stop? Can we make it permanent? That's a great question. So it's a 2-year exemption. It took effect March of this year. So what we're planning for in the 2025 budget is for the year-round exemption. And that's typically the quarter that we're allowed to opt into with the state. And the legislature agreed that it would be a 2-year exemption. There will be an opportunity to extend it if we want to. I think we can certainly account on how sales tax is being brought in. Our sales tax revenue that we're bringing in for 2024 is still what we budgeted for 2024, even though we had that, we didn't have that, we were pushing for that exemption. 2025 will be the full year, and at that time, when we talk about 2026, it would be set to expire in March of 2026, unless we extend it next year. And I think that's a conversation that we all want to have. Part of my decision will be based on, has inflation slowed down? That's the predominant reason why we're doing this. It's meaningful tax relief for those that are impacted the most. And we can see what our financial condition. Right now, our financial condition is very strong, and we can manage it. So, great. Do you want to just raise hands? Any other questions? I know that man. You don't have to say your name. Edward. Ed.
All right.
Do you want a microphone, Ed?
No, I don't need a microphone. So I'm with the Westchester Putnam Village Race. I'm a Putnam County resident for, 35 years. I don't know where it went. I'd like to thank Kevin for the first 4 PLAs, project labor agreements, which mandate that we have local participation, local contractors, and professional training on the projects to fix some of the aging infrastructure, which leads me into the question. Strong communities exist around strong capital and strong infrastructure. What is the rating of our bridges that the county owns overall? If you know that, if you don't, I understand. I'm not, popular father. And what is the capital plan to fix our aging infrastructure? Because aging infrastructure is a lot like as you get older, right? You can do a lot to make yourself pretty, but the less you maintain it, the more it costs to maintain it, and the harder it is to get back. So what is the county's plan moving forward on some of our aged bridges and infrastructure?
So I'm going to answer that all in a couple of different ways. One, Chris, can we get the county website up so we'll see a glimpse of the 6-year capital plan? Okay. We also want to show them the taxpayer budget transparency website. Actually, the capital plan is on that website too, so we can go straight to that. And I'll show you The county by charter is required the county executive as a capital projects committee, which includes representatives of the legislature and the executive branch, where we prepare a 6-year capital plan. And then obviously that includes our first year, it would be year 1, 2025, which is outlined as well. A lot of those projects are leveraged with federal dollars as well as a local share. And that's where we actually traditionally would borrow a lot, and we haven't been doing it. We've been using our capital reserve account, and that represents that $6.1 million that we're not borrowing for 2025. As far as the ratings for the bridges, yes, I think it's important to acknowledge when people ask what's the difference between county government, town government, village government. Bridges is a big one. County government across the state is predominantly responsible for the maintenance of those bridges. So big difference between a culvert. You might drive over a culvert and it's so big that you think it's a bridge. But I forget the exact diameter, if it's 25, but if it's over a certain size, then it's a bridge, and it's maintained predominantly by county government. I don't have that specific number. I know the state did a report, statewide average, on those that were less than satisfactory, and there's a large scale of different ratings, and I wouldn't want to give the wrong rating. So I can definitely get back to Ed and talk to our friends at DPW, Commissioner Fury. But on that note, let me talk a little about the capital plan itself. Okay. Sorry. So let me talk about some of the more interesting projects. They're right here. I was going to prepare with a hard copy here. I want you guys to be able to see this. So it's right on the front. It used to be, before I took office, the capital plan would be just a spreadsheet. Literally just an Excel spreadsheet. And this is where our team in finance has really done an exceptional job, where they help us, quite frankly, Commissioner Lewis helps me, and helps draft the narrative, outlining our plan, outlining how much debt we're relying on or not relying on, and also shows a multi-year forecasting. They've done so much in finance where for the year 2025, they break down the share, the local share, as well as federal and state monies. So you'll see a project somewhere on there. There's a sign back there about Mike Moore bringing in a lot of federal money, which we're grateful for. $5.5 million to be precise for county government to improve our pedestrian walkways. Here, these are all the capital project requests. If you scroll up a little bit, Chris, you can see the number. Scroll down. This is the top. You can see the year capital request 2025. That's one of the requests for this year. And then there's some of these are routine expenses that we have every year, things like taking care of our roads and bridges that are regular, projects in any 6-year capital plan that the county has. But there's also a lot of exciting new projects. So some of them are facilities and some of them are transportation. A big one for transportation in Carmel is Fair Street. You won't see it on the capital plan because it was in the previous year. But the notice to proceed has already been issued. We have a town hall forum scheduled tentatively with the contractor that won the bid in November. And I think that's November 13th, and it's at the Bureau of Emergency Services Auditorium. I think that's really important because when you have a very large scale project, I mean, that's over $20 million, something that's been talked about since Dave Broom was county executive, almost 40 years. I think you got to set expectations. The Fair Street project is going to be disruptive for our friends in the Carmel community. You got the county building there, right? But you also have the high school right there. You got the post office right there. So managing expectations and how people can prepare and plan accordingly, I think is really important. So you won't see that, but that's going to be one that is it was on one of our previous years that was funded. Now, let me look for some of the more exciting. Here's one. It's a new addition for 2025 for our capital plan for next year, and it's a new Veterans Museum. It's essentially a Quonset hut. That's what we're looking to put on the Putnam County Veterans Memorial Park, the lower lot. We've had a Veterans Museum for a number of years, but it's underutilized. I don't think it's really been funded properly over the years, and has been somewhat neglected. We want it to be operational. They have some really amazing items in there that should be featured, and our Veterans and Service Agency, Carl Rody and his deputy Tanya, are very excited about this. And we were planning to fund it through county dollars. Fortunately, as some minutes later, has notified us that he's gotten us a state grant of $50,000 that's going to offset the vast majority of those costs. So that's one exciting project. Paving, maintenance, we talked about that. Give me something exciting, Chris. The PIN numbers are the state funding. When you see a PIN number, whether there's dams, we have plans for dams in the out years as well. Buses, okay, keep going. These are all the narratives. Scroll down to the. So you see 2027. That's to do the exterior work of one of our county facilities. Ludingtonville Road's on there. That's for 2028. So all this information, can you go back, Chris, and show them where they can see this? So if you go to putnamcountyny.gov, you can select, it's actually right on the landing page. You go to the county executive page, or right on the top, the landing page, you see the video presentation. If you want to hear me speak longer, you can feel free to do that. Not encouraging it. Or you can go to the Budget Transparency website, and those other two documents here, that is a PDFs of what I provided to the legislature. It is essentially this. It's the 6-year capital plan. It is the vehicle inventory list. It's everything that required to try to get to the legislature. In addition to the budget lines, it's right on there so everyone can see it.
We did have another question about capital projects.
Sure. Okay, and we'll go to the Budget Transparency website too, so we can see that. So the question you got from Adam, construction on Fair Street, heard it mentioned a couple of times. Yes, it's, I don't have the exact start date, but that's where we're going to have a town hall forum in November 13th at the Bureau of Emergency Services, also known as the TOPS building in Carmel. And we're going to bring in the contractor to help set all the expectations and timeline. Right now, it's more preparation work, survey work. They're not doing the real work right now. We want to make sure we get that town hall first. And part of this is lessons learned from our friends in Putnam Valley, where I grew up, the Peace of the Hollow Road project. Anyone that followed that, the contractor, before I took office, walked off the job about a month prior, and it got us tied into some costly litigation. But what we did is, as soon as we got a new bid out and got a new contractor, we brought them in for a town hall. We had over 100 people from Putnam Valley participate, ask questions. Believe me, they were angry. They had opened up roadways and bridges. It was already, I think its second year was supposed to be done. They were getting extensions. It interrupted the school on Peace of the Hollow Road, Putnam Valley. But we answered their questions. We had the contractor here to lay out a timeline and just be real with people. And when you're real with people, you'll be surprised. They're very reasonable. All they want to know is, the truth and the facts as you have them. But we're going to have a similar form on November 13th. So this is the tentative budget website. If you click that off the county gov, putnamcountyny.gov, you're going to see an introduction here on the left, and that's just the general overview of the budget. If you hover over introduction, it gives you a breakdown, county history, organizational charts, all this kind of stuff. Fund structure, financial practices, the budget process itself. If you go over the budget overview, these are other background materials for the budget. Some of them are the slides from the presentation. You go to the fund summaries, that's more into the actual funds that we rely on to support this budget. If you go to funding sources similar, departments is what people usually drive towards. And I also think there's a section where we have personnel, right? Any personnel changes, whether reclassifications, new positions being added, people typically are going to be drawn to that. One of the biggest costs in any municipality is operations and personnel. If you go to departments, you're going to see, we're going to go to the Bureau of Emergency Services. That's Bob looking up there, the mission statement for the Bureau. You got the organizational chart. You can scroll down. You have their total budget, marginally less than last year. You can see, let me just show them, this is kind of neat. You'll see like there's a big variance in 24 and 25. And that's because we haven't completed 2024 yet, right? So you're dealing with actual numbers as they were given from the finance department. But you see the darker blue is the actual, and then the lighter blue is what the budget amount was. So you can see that they've been consistently operating under budget, which is good. Scrolling down, this is their expenditure by expense. And I can go tab by tab. I'm not going to do that because you can do that in your own time. But the real value is taxpayers used to have to go online and sift through all this. There was no pie charts, there was no description, there was no narrative. You had to find out, okay, what's the budget code? What does that mean? Okay, what does education train? You couldn't really get a real sense from it. Unless you were in that space, you couldn't really digest it as an average resident and see why are my taxes going down or how come they're able to stay flat. That's truly what this is about. Other questions? And Chris knows I can keep going on forever. Those are just the two that came in online. So we got
I
questions.
got one more, Kevin.
Ed will keep going.
I'll keep going. So.
Don't let him, please.
Yeah,
Just
so,
kidding.
with the advent of that god-awful AI and the need for more power and a governor that is running extension cord from wind power in Canada, which is ineffective. Battery plants are a short-term gap in environmental hazard. What is Putnam County doing to forecast the shortfall for energy generation within the county? Because all of the governor's mandates for Indian Point with the megaton wattage shortage, down county is addressing that, and nothing is being done to address rural Putnam and Dutchess and Orange. What are we doing to meet those energy needs and forecast that?
That's a great question. So what I can say is county government can't put a monopoly on the energy industry and all of a sudden fill all our energy needs. But we do have the ability to take control and support our facilities and take certain actions, and we've done that. Ed knows this. When I was in the Assembly, I think it was the first 10 days on the job, and the then governor, Cuomo, announced they were shutting down Indian Point. It was like baptism by fire. I had always been a supporter of nuclear power and of Indian Point. I think it was one of the safest nuclear power plants in the country. I think the decision to close it was a bad decision. It also leads to an energy replacement system that if you're concerned about carbon footprints, it's going to automatically increase your carbon footprint because you only go up from zero, you don't go down. But what I will say is, and the project that Ed alluded to is the acronym CHIPPY. It's basically a Canadian extension. I think you very appropriately described it, of hydroelectric power from Canada all the way down to New York City, including down the Hudson River. A lot of reasons why people should be opposed to a proposal like that. On top of the environmental concerns that you may have, I don't believe it is smart for the state of New York to be relying on a foreign nation for its energy needs. America and New York should try to generate as much as it can in-house. Now, Putnam County, we're a small county. We're not going to be able to do that on our scale. But we have done things to become more sustainable in our energy needs. Part of it is becoming a bronze climate smart community with the state's DEC. And you may not realize this because most people just think, oh, you're climate smart, you're bronze. And they think that it's all about solar and green this and green that. And it very much is. It's about limiting our carbon footprint, being responsible stewards of the environment, but it's not just that. It's also about strengthening our resiliency. It's also about if you're going to have warming stations during major storm outages, that you have generators to support them. Those generators are fossil fuel. So when I first learned it, I was kind of surprised. I actually get points if I get a fossil fuel generator for climate smart bronze. That was something that kind of raised my eyebrow. But it actually makes sense if you're looking to be more resilient. We do have solar arrays on top of some of our county facilities, including the one that my office is in, right on Glen Ida Avenue. So to the extent that we can do that, we've done that. And then we've also tried to be more competitive in the free market, where by going towards our Department of General Services model, instead of looking to procure things in a segmented fashion, department by department, by leveraging the full purchasing power of the county government through a Department of General Services, it allows us to be more competitive and get better deals and rates, and that includes locking in more competitive utility rates. So we've been successful in that regard as well. But I don't have the ability to compete with the governor and put up a power plant, and I don't think residents would want that either. The battery issue, I think it's not unique to Carmel. I think you're going to see that pop up all over the place. When they shut down Indian Point, and Ed knows this, I was a very frequent participant at the task force hearings they held, and they constantly talked about how you maintain resiliency and have replacement power. And they said 20% of it will be efficiencies. Well, how efficient can you be? Like, how far can you just get you to zero? And I always felt now that was battery storage facilities, energy storage facilities. So they're not looking for one site. I think they're probably looking to pop them up everywhere. But electric is not the end all be all. It just isn't. Mr. Rashford, Jimmy.
Hi, Kevin. Jim Rafterman. I saw about the early intervention pre-K program. I think it was $1.5 million. Is that what was mandated for Putnam County to pay into that program, or was that the total cost of the program?
That's all the county cost. So in some cases we get dollars back to offset some of this, but whether it's offset and funded by taxation or not, either way it's driving new spending. And it's predominantly pushed not by anybody coming down and saying you have to give $1.5 million more. It's because there's more people that are utilizing the program. There's a lot more families that I believe have been enrolling, and there's no control over that. We're obligated, mandated to provide those services. So some of that's generated by need. Similar to the 730 cases. If there's no one doing it, then it's zero. But if we have 5 people all year round, it adds up really quickly.
I just want to also say that I'm a proponent of that program. Wasn't questioning why we have it.
Nope, absolutely. So thank you, Jim. Yeah, it's because more people are using it. So, Mr. Malloy, I see John.
So John Malloy, I live here in Mayapack. And Kevin, I want to thank you so much for all the work that must have gone into this budget. I've had a little experience with budgets. This was a lot of work. And I can tell you, as a father and a husband, it's very important to me. Public safety is one of the main reasons we moved to Putnam County. And Putnam County is one of the 25 safest counties in the state. How does this budget impact Bob Tendy's district attorney's office and Kevin McConville's sheriff's department?
Sure. So it does a number of things for public safety. We have an elected sheriff that is the person that manages our sheriff's office. We have an elected district attorney that obviously operates the DA's office. We also have the Bureau of Emergency Services that has a very important role in public safety as well on the emergency management side. It does maintain all of our obligations to all of those departments. There is an adjustment in the personnel lines for the district attorney's office, predominantly used with some of the discovery grant dollars that the district attorney has been able to obtain from the state of New York. But he also gets age prosecution dollars to make those salaries more competitive. The DA proposed changing some of the titles that we did earlier this year to have an appellate attorney, as well as a chief, I believe it's Chief Bureau, but I get the title wrong, assistant district attorney. So it funds that, which helps, I believe, make the DA's office more competitive so they can recruit and also retain the talented workforce that they need. It's a challenge across the board, recruitment and retention. It is something else I mentioned in the budget. We're talking about health insurance costs and what's the right contribution limit for public employees. On the personnel side, it does a lot for the DA's office. I think protective is Thursday, but personnel is the legislative budget meeting for personnel is next week. And I think if that's not clear already, it will be made clear then as well. Last year, in the 2024 budget, we funded 2 additional police positions in the sheriff's office, a civil sergeant as well as a sergeant in the corrections facility. Both those positions, along with all the other ones that are maintained by our men and women in blue, are funded. And what I announced in the budget presentation as well, which is very big news for the sheriff and myself, at the State of the County in 2020, early this year, State of the County at Philly Foster Farm, I announced that we had a PBA contract. At the budget presentation last week, I announced that we had an MOA with the PCSDA, which is essentially the union for the corrections officer. So recruitment and retention and having confidence that you have a future in your employment, a lot of that has to do with having a contract. So I think those are two very big things for both of them. It's not necessarily reflected in the budget, but an accomplishment for this year on the bureau side. I talked about last year the Fire Training Center, named after Lieutenant Michael Lunar of the Brewster Fire Department, who was a line of duty death. It's been open and closed intermittently because of the burn building has been open and closed intermittently over the last several years. And the tower has been essentially closed for almost a decade. If you drive by now on Gypsy Trail Road, you're going to see the tower's down, foundations laid, and we're going to have a new state-of-the-art fire training center that costs $1.3 million. But that isn't just for our specialty response teams in the county. That supports every local volunteer fire department and emergency service agency. And that also is done because of support from Senator Harkin. He brought in a state grant of $300,000. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. But that's another big thing for public safety. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Stevens, I think you're doing this.
My name is Carol. I'm the librarian at the Kent Public Library. I want to thank you for your support of libraries. I'm hoping this year we might be able to have a small increase. Like everybody else, we're facing a lot of inflation. Our health insurance is going up. The minimum wage is affecting us a lot. A lot of people who work in libraries are earning minimum wage or just slightly above it. We also have a great increase in demand for audiobooks and ebooks. It's the new way of reading. A lot of younger people are using the audiobooks as they drive, and we simply don't have enough money to keep up with demand. So we're hoping that you will consider this as you put the final budget numbers together.
Thank you. And libraries, I've always loved libraries, still do. Frequent Mayapack Library or Mahopac Library, whoever you're talking to. They have services for our youth. My child's been there for sing-alongs, but also for our seniors. Truly, it's education for people of all ages and backgrounds. And the beauty is, even if you didn't live in Mayapack, if you live in Southeast and want to come over to the library, they're going to open their doors for you. And every library is the same. I've been a big supporter of libraries when I was in the Assembly. In county government, we continue to support libraries. The level of funding for the libraries in the 25 budget was flat and consistent with the 24 funding. We did not provide an increase, but that's the tentative budget. That's the executive budget that I submitted. We did include a number of new agencies that got funded this year that are also deserving. And there's so many great organizations and charities. We have to try to prioritize that spending and find out where is it going to go the best. Where for supporting a nonprofit, I always look at the metric system of if they're not doing their work, would the county government then have to step in and do it? You can make that argument for a number of them. But right now, the tentative budget did increase spending overall for those outside agencies, which includes our legal aid, it includes Cornell Cooperative Extension, Putnam CAP, and there's a long list. But that's just the tentative budget. It's called tentative for a reason. The legislature's having their meetings. I know they had a meeting last night. I didn't get to watch it. They don't live stream their meetings yet, but they do have them on audio and visual, which we're very happy about. So you can go on the county's YouTube channel and watch them. And they have, I believe, audit and finance legislative meeting where they also then can make modifications to the tentative budget. So they can measure things up, right? They can measure things down. They can eliminate a program. They can increase a program. They have to identify the funding for that. Our libraries know that there's a sub-contingency line that the legislature has the ability to access if they want to. They can try to do something else with that as well. Once they make those changes, they then goes to me, and then I get to consider every individual change on its merit. I can either approve it or veto it. I'm eager to see what the legislatures do. They've made some changes already, but they still have some work ahead of them. So thank you, and thank you for all the great work that you and our friends in the library system do.
I know my fellow librarians were at the meeting till after 9 last night with the committee trying to make the same case.
And I will tell you, that's appreciated by people like me. Because last year, certainly not in the libraries, I got an earful from some legislators that said, why weren't all these people there? And I'm like, I don't know. So every time we met with them, when we went through our budget process, I said, please engage the legislature, participate in that process. We'll do our level best to let you know what's going to be put in the executive budget as it gets closer. But understand that's not the end. The legislature has the ability and responsibility to be critical of my proposals, and then they can modify it. The end is, when I sign it or veto it, and then they override. That's in November. But you now have a month to advocate, so I appreciate you being there and participating in that important process. I think I saw Mr. Cullen over there raise his hand. Mr. Bob. Sorry, I'm giving out last names.
I looked at the budget correctly. It's great what you're doing, keeping up. People need that. Just a couple of things. The bike trail. It's a gem of Putnam County. It's a great ride a lot. There is a problem though, especially like around Brewster with graffiti, homeless people sleeping along the trail. I know one of the town board members in Southeast showed me some pictures they have of some guys passed out. Police patrols maybe need to be increased. The graffiti, even the bridge when you're going from southeast towards Carmel along Route 6, there's always graffiti on it. Which is the bike trail, but if you're driving on, because it's Carmel Avenue at that point, it needs to be addressed quicker, I think, because it's the broken window theory, I guess. People aren't going to do it if it's going to be removed right away. Maybe, I know in Westchester, and I don't know if it works or not, they have a county law in Westchester that spray paint can't be sold to anyone under 18. That I don't know if that, I don't know who's doing spray painting to sold to people or not. That's something maybe the legislators would want to consider. But it definitely, it's a shame when, you see with graffiti and everything. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And I've heard from Legislator Castellano about that. I think Councilman Larca has reached out to us in the last year about it. The transient population that is, the homeless. We don't have a surging homeless crisis here the way that some other counties do, but make no mistake, there's people that are in need, and there's a transient population that either originates from Putnam or just comes through, and it comes from somewhere else, and then they come into Putnam. And there is an issue with on occasion where folks have been identified that there's encampments on the trail. When those reports come in, we do our level best with law enforcement, but also our team in social services and mental health. They do a lot of visits. Sometimes they go up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go over and visit, because if they go during the daytime, there's no one there. And then a big challenge is getting people to agree to take the help. Sometimes that's a bit of a challenge. But it's something that we're very mindful of, because we don't want anyone to be left out in the cold or hungry. And we also want people to use this treasure, the Empire State Trail. I love using it as well. We own a portion of it. I think the MTA owns the Maybrook line up there. But we've largely maintained the trail. We have agreements in place. And when there is graffiti or any other sort of vandalism, we ask people to report it so we can try to address it as soon as possible. One thing I am excited about, Legislator Albano actually worked really hard on this when he was in the legislature. I was a big supporter as well. We talked about it. I worked for NAM in Congress. They talked about putting signs on the trail. So I think they finally got to a point in the previous administration where okay, we're going to do this. It's not billboards, it's not like commercial. They're nice trailheads, have mapping, QR codes for safety, so if there's an issue, you can snap the QR code and let law enforcement know. They know exactly where you are. There's a lot of pros to this. We signed a contract, we're all good to go. Under this administration, really was a continuation of the prior administration. But one of the bigger sponsors for the project was Nuvance, and Nuvance has some plans to work with Northwell, and they kind of slowed things down a little bit. But I'm very excited to see that too, because I think that will also help when there's an issue. People can snap a picture and then you know exactly where it is, and they can get a response quicker too, which I think is important. Thank you, Bob. Jim.
Hi, Jim. Thank you again. I know on your budget meeting you couldn't attend there, but I know you're a proponent of not-for-profits, and we're very grateful for that. I think you had mentioned about the importance of non-for-profits in our community, and maybe I misunderstood. Some people were concerned about the county have to pay for not-for-profits if they fail. Was that an issue?
No. There are a number of outside agencies, which is the budget term, really that are not-for-profits in the county that provide services. And over the years, through previous legislatures and administrations, some of them are more contractual, like we have a mandated responsibility to provide a service and they do it for us, right? Which, frankly, at a less expensive cost, so it's a very important thing. And in other cases, it may have been more political. They're great organizations, and they might help address some of the social determinants of health, where they improve, food insecurity, or they help education, or they help transportation, whatever the nonprofit goal is. So there's a number of organizations that have traditionally been funded in the county budget. I'll give you an example that I like to use for one that's more contractual, that they're providing a mandated service. That's the legal aid, right? Legal aid, if they weren't doing that, I would have to hire public personnel somehow to do that, and it would cost a lot more. So they have a contribution from the county government. Cornell Cooperative Extension, they have a contribution. They're nonprofit, but they're a cooperative, and they get a contribution from the county government. And quite frankly, the contribution from the county is what leverages the contribution from the state. So if we didn't give them as much, they may not get as much from the state. So there's an important formula there. The SPCA police, they get some funding that offsets the cost of the rent for their facility. That was implemented by the prior administration, that's continued. So there's a series of some of them that have been funded traditionally and put a request for funding. It's not really a grant, it's a request for funding in the budget that's made budget in previous years and as well as this year.
On that last issue, there's a number of people here from United for the Troops, and we're self-supporting through contributions, and we're all volunteers. So we just want to say thank you for your support for so many not-for-profits in the county, and you acknowledging how important they are for our community, and we're very thankful for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. Not just me, my entire family love you. They love United for the Troops. The work that you guys do, it's remarkable, and I've shared this before. You've touched so many lives, but you touched my family's life too, because when my brother was deployed, United for the Troops shipped the care package to him. So I'm very, very grateful, and my father's here, he's very grateful as well. And I love not-for-profits. Before I ran for elected office, I worked for one of the largest health organizations that's not-for-profit, the American Heart Association. I worked for them for 3 to 4 years. Believe me, there's a bottom line in every organization, whether it's a not-for-profit or for-profit, and I appreciate all the work that you do and the impact that you have.
Usually, not enough from another Jim, who had a question sort of related.
Oh, yeah.
From you too. That's just.
Legal aid, what is legal aid? Mentioned it a couple times. Legal aid is the Legal Aid Society, is the organization that provides legal services to those that can't afford it. That's in very lengthy terms. And they receive a county contribution from our county budget. The question, I don't think I read it, was from Jim. What is legal aid? Mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah, which is fine. Jim.
Yes.
Question.
So I might have kind of quasi-answered it, but
yeah.
Before. Any other questions? We don't have time. We're not trying to rush on off.
There's another question from Facebook.
Oh, that was cool. That was from YouTube. This is from Facebook. From Ron. Why can't I watch legislative meetings live? I watched my town board meetings on YouTube live. Ron, I'm not a legislator. I used to be one in the state. I'm not a legislator anymore. As the executive, I can tell you I've advocated for live streaming of public meetings. That's why we're live streaming this one. We have a YouTube channel and technology to live stream. I think the legislature has taken an important incremental step by installing the equipment that will enable them to live stream. They now have audio and visual equipment in their committee rooms to live stream. They have not taken that step yet. I have encouraged them to do that. I have told them I fully support live streaming of meetings. I actually proposed legislation that would make it a law for us to, I call it the Taxpayer Transparency Act, where we would self-mandate live streaming. I think if we don't do it in the next 2 to 3 years, the state's going to mandate us to do it anyway. And actually, I harp on unfunded mandates for the state and the federal government quite a bit. I actually think that's a good one. I think we should be live streaming and being more accessible. And I think what exposed that as the bigger issue for me was the pandemic. When maybe we tested our limits, we didn't know if we could do this as well as we could, but I was voting on Zoom in the state assembly from my basement. I mean, it's kind of wild. And I would call in my vote, and everybody was doing that. And it kind of showed that you can do the people's business. I want people to show up. I don't like elected officials voting remotely. That's my opinion, but we should be able to live stream. I can also say, I'm trying to think about if there's anything else specific to the legislature. They have their meeting going on right now. When they were doing operations during COVID, they broadcast their business live through the company, but it was audio only. It wasn't video and audio. So you could actually listen to all their meetings in audio only live during the pandemic. You can't now. It's not live, but you can watch and listen, which to me is very important. What if you're hearing impaired, or if you're a senior citizen and disabled? Like, I can listen, but it should be video, audio, caption ability. So that's my opinion. And when we do live streaming, that's what we try to do as an administration. Any other questions? All right, on that note, I wanted to say thank you for participating in our very first budget town hall in the town of Carmel. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay healthy and stay safe.
You got the email, right? Yeah, that's why I'm here. I didn't know about this.